Humans have always had a flair for the dramatic. We can't just settle for a normal, run-of-the-mill animal. No, we've got to go all out and imagine majestic unicorns, giant man-eating sea monsters, and fire-breathing dragons. Why? Well, because reality is too boring, of course. So we did what humans do best. We spiced things up. But surprise, surprise, a few of these mythical creatures that haunt your dreams were actually inspired by real-life animals. Yes, the Kraken wasn't just a sailors had too much rum hallucination. There's some reality hiding under all the folklore fluff. So let's dive into the world of mythical creatures that shockingly weren't entirely plucked from the depths of our wild imaginations. Okay, maybe just a little. Let's go for the ride through the real-life animals behind your favorite mythical monsters, because nothing says fun like imagining how we turned a harmless creature into a beast that terrorized entire villages. Ah, the Kraken. The mere mention of the beast sends chills down the spine of anyone who's ever been on a boat. They might have thought at some point, yeah, I can totally handle the open sea, but the Kraken is your classic nope moment. As the legend goes, it's a giant squid or octopus with tentacles long enough to hug or destroy entire ships, pulling them into the deep ocean where, presumably, it starts its day with a sailor sandwich. If you're picturing something out of Pirates of the Caribbean or a nightmare fueled by too much calamari, you're not really that far off. Now here's the fun part. The Kraken might actually kinda exist. While I'm sorry to disappoint you, it's not going to be wrapping its tentacles around the next cruise liner that you board. But instead, you can say hello to a giant squid, the real-life inspiration behind this tentacled terror. These squids are huge. Like, wow, I did not need to see that huge. They can grow to a terrifying 40 feet or 12 meters long, which is about the size of a city bus, but with more tentacles and fewer scheduled stops. Imagine being a sailor in the 1700s, just going about your day, and then suddenly a 40-foot squid surfaces next to your dinky wooden ship. Yeah, no thanks. Of course, the logical thing to do would be to embellish the story a little bit when you get back to shore. What was probably, I saw a really big squid, quickly becomes, you wouldn't believe it. It was the size of an island, and it had enough arms to play Twister with an entire crew. Boom. The Kraken was born. So while the Kraken might not be real, the terror that those sailors felt was very, very real. And honestly, if I saw a squid that big, I'd probably start spinning some tales too. Mainly about why I live in the desert now, far, far away from the ocean. Let's talk about the king of mythical creatures, the dragon. Now, every fantasy book, every movie, and Dungeons & Dragons campaign has one, because, let's face it, dragons are just pretty cool. Whether they're guarding treasure, flying majestically through the skies, or burning down villages with their fiery breath, dragons have secured their place as the ultimate beast in mythology. But what if I told you that they might be more than just figments of imagination? Okay, before you get too excited, dragons probably never existed in the way that we imagine. No wings, no fiery breath, and so on. But here's where things get interesting. The idea of dragons may have come from ancient humans stumbling across dinosaur fossils. Now, if you were wandering around, let's say 3000 BC, and you came across a giant set of bones with massive teeth, you're probably going to assume, wow, that thing must have been dangerous. Also, I bet it breathed fire, because why not? Add a few centuries of storytelling, and suddenly you've got yourself a dragon. Now, let's not forget that in some parts of the world today, we have real-life dragons, Komodo dragons, to be precise. Sure, they don't fly, and they're more interested in eating their weight in meat than hoarding treasure, but look, they're still terrifying. These oversized lizards can grow over 10 feet or 3 meters long and have venomous bites. If one of those wandered into a medieval village, I guarantee you that no one would say, it's just a big lizard. No, they'd be writing poems about the fire-breathing monster that almost ate Farmer John's cow. So while we may not have the dragon soaring through the skies, we've definitely had some scaly and terrifying creatures roaming the earth, just minus the pyrotechnics. The griffin is what happens when someone looked at a lion and thought, now look, this is great, but what if it could also fly and rip my face off from the sky? Boom, the griffin was born. This mythical mashup has the body of a lion and the head and wings of an eagle, because obviously nature wasn't terrifying enough on its own. We had to add a flying predator into the mix. But where did this wild combo come from? Well, historians believe that the griffin might have been inspired by people stumbling across the fossilized remains of the Protoceratops, a beaked dinosaur. To ancient humans, the creature probably looked like someone tried to Frankenstein a bird and a lion together. With no paleontology degrees to fall back on, they did what any sensible ancient person would do. They made up an epic story all about it. And thus, the legend of the griffin was born. But seriously, can we take a moment to appreciate how wild the concept is? A lion on its own is already a terrifying apex predator. An eagle is a fierce bird of prey, but combine the two, and you've got something that could literally hunt you down from any direction, air or land. Personally, I'm just glad nature didn't decide to take notes and actually make this thing. Could you imagine? You'd have to worry about getting swooped up by a giant bird-lion hybrid every time you went outside. Yeah, no thanks. Unicorns, you know them, you love them, they're majestic and magical, and they're horses with a single horn on its forehead, prancing around in the field of rainbows, curing disease, and making childhood dreams come true. But like many things that are just too good to be true, unicorns probably weren't what they seemed. Brace yourself, the inspiration behind unicorns may have been, not horses, rhinoceroses. Yeah, rhinos. I'll let you sit with that for a moment. Imagine an ancient traveler who's never seen a rhino before. They're wandering about, and suddenly they spot this massive horned beast that's just lumbering around. Naturally, when they tell the story, it's not going to be, oh, look, I saw this big gray animal with a horn and a really bad attitude. No, it's going to be, I saw a beautiful horse with a giant horn coming out of its head, and it was magical. Because if you're going to stretch the truth, you might as well go all in. And then there's also the elasmotherium, an extinct species of giant rhino with an enormous horn sticking out of its head. These prehistoric tanks were likely the closest thing to unicorns that ever walked the earth. But instead of daintily prancing around, they were probably trampling anything in their path. Somehow, that doesn't quite fit with the whole pure and good unicorn vibe that we've got going on today. So while unicorns are symbols of purity and grace, they actually, in reality, might have been a little less magical and a lot more dangerous. Mermaids, the half-fish, half-human seductresses of the sea. They've been long the stuff of sailor legends, with their flowing long hair, beautiful singing voices, and ability to lure sailors to their watery doom. Mermaids seem almost too good and dangerous to be true. And, well, yeah, they probably were. The truth is, mermaids weren't likely the magical sea maidens at all. Instead, they were probably just manatees. Yeah, those big, slow-moving, blubbery sea cows that are more likely to munch on some seaweed than to serenade sailors. But before you start judging sailors for confusing manatees with beautiful women, let's think of the facts. These guys were often at sea for months on end with little food, too much alcohol, and probably some serious vitamin deficiencies. After weeks of staring at nothing but water, a manatee starts to look a little different. Suddenly, the lonely sailor sees a creature with long, flowing flippers and a seductive voice. Or, okay, maybe it's more of a snort, but still, the next thing you know, he's writing home about the mermaid that almost dragged him to a watery grave. So no, mermaids weren't really sitting on rocks and combing their hair and waiting for you to crash into the shore, but they did have some real-life counterparts that were just as bizarre, if not a little more wrinkly than you'd expect. So what did we learn today, folks? Mythical creatures, while mostly imaginary, weren't entirely plucked from just our imaginations. From giant squids and dinosaur fossils to misunderstood rhinos and manatees, there's a surprising amount of truth lurking behind each myth. Ancient humans may have embellished just a little bit, or maybe a lot, but can you really blame them? If you saw a giant squid or a 40-foot dinosaur fossil, wouldn't you spin a tale about it too? At the end of the day, our ancestors were just trying to make sense of the bizarre creatures around them. And in doing so, they created the epic, fire-breathing, treasure-hoarding, ship-sinking legends that we love to this day. So while the creatures may not have been as fantastical as we thought, their stories certainly are. And isn't that what really matters? We'll see you on our next video. Peace!